Welcome to Confronting the Mirror. Do narcissists face their own reflection? I'm Randi Fine, and I am a narcissistic abuse expert. I have personally lived narcissistic abuse and fully recovered from it. I've spent decades of time researching this topic. I've written professionally about this. I've spoken professionally. And for over 15 years, I've helped thousands of people worldwide recover from this horrible, horrible issue. To be clear, when I talk about narcissism or narcissistic abuse, I'm referring to a mental health pathology. This is a diagnosable personality disorder. I'm referring to those whose thoughtless behaviors and cruel actions have impacted the lives of others in devastating and lasting ways. Psychologist Albert Bernstein puts it this way. When people are driving themselves crazy, they have neurosis or psychosis. When they drive other people crazy, they have personality disorders. Imagine being able to, or unable to feel love or care for anyone else, to never feel responsible or remorseful about anything that you do to others, or the way your actions impact others. To be unable to relate to or empathize with others' experiences. To regard everyone as objects of self-indulgence, not worthy individuals. That is the mentality of someone who has narcissistic personality disorder. These individuals grandly overestimate the effect that they have on others. Cues are misread and misconstrued. They believe they are the center of attention and that everyone adores them wherever they go. So if narcissists have a distorted sense of self, and they clearly do, as you will learn throughout this discussion, what do they see when they look in the mirror? Do they self-reflect? What is their perception of self? Are they mindfully aware? What roles do others play in the grand illusion they exist in? Socrates famously said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." In other words, failing to take time for self-reflection can lead us to become consumed by trivial matters and lose sight of what truly matters in life. The term reflect signifies the act of reviewing or viewing something again. Reflection enables us to revisit recent experiences, contemplate them, ponder over them, and gain insights from them. Engaging in self-reflection requires thought, discipline, and intentionality. It's about taking a break from the busyness of life, sitting with ourselves, and devoting time to contemplate and ponder what has transpired in our lives. Personal reflection allows us to examine our words and actions. It allows us to review our consequences and outcomes of our words and actions. Reflection requires courage. It can be a challenging task for many of us. There are 5 primary tools we can use for self-reflection: self-talk, self-explaining, journaling, gratitude practice or appreciative reflecting, meditation or prayer, and communication with others and the feedback that we get. Self-reflection is how we examine our inner self. Self-perception is how we see our outer self in relationship to others in the world. We perceive ourselves through the influence of society, family, culture, and media. These all play a role in shaping who we think we are and how we feel about ourselves. We all see the world differently based on our own experiences, values, and insecurities. When it comes to judging ourselves, this personal perspective can lead to a big difference between how we see ourselves and how others see us. We tend to analyze every little thing about ourselves, from our physical imperfections to what we think our unique personality traits are, much more intensely than we do with others. We use mirrors in the same way we use face-to-face communication to receive feedback on our identity and our current experiences. A brief look in the mirror reinforces our perception of self. Mirrors can stir up some strong emotions in us, and they can also be super powerful for changing how we see things and discovering parts of ourselves that are usually hidden. We all have this basic natural need to be seen and reflected. Throughout time, mirrors have often been linked to vanity and self-absorption. However, in daily life, many individuals tend to shy away from prolonged self-reflection, not wanting to trigger negative thoughts about their appearance. We are conditioned to measure our physical image against societal ideals, and norms, which is the usual way that we tend to interact with mirrors. Yet, whether we are aware of it or not, mirrors and reflective surfaces also influence our psychological and emotional well-being. Whether we feel better or worse can be influenced by our self-reflection. The reasons behind this behavior may be misunderstood and often misinterpreted. It's not just about vanity. People seek their own reflection because it provides them with a sense of self-worth. Looking at oneself in the mirror boosts the ego, especially when individuals don't hold themselves in high regard. They seek validation from their outward appearance, believing that it garners respect and admiration from others. Additionally, they may think that the better they look in the mirror, the more they are valued and respected by others. While the mirror can be used for self-critique, it also provides insight into how harshly we judge ourselves. Looking at ourselves with kind intention can alleviate anxiety, while doing so without kindness can fuel our inner critic. The mirror is also a symbol of narcissism, an extremely important psychological concept, and one that has profoundly negative personal and cultural implications. Often the image of the narcissist gazing at their reflection evokes a sense of self-absorption. The story of Narcissus from Greek mythology, who fell in love with his own reflection, further emphasizes this idea. However, it's essential to recognize that having a healthy curiosity or fascination with oneself does not necessarily equate to narcissism. The reason mirrors are significant in discussions about narcissism is because they represent the fundamental deficiency of the narcissist. Narcissists lack a healthy self-relationship that can offer them stability and grounding. They struggle to define themselves. Instead, they depend on external feedback to form their self-image. The reflection in the mirror validates their existence and shapes their identity, an identity that is merely fictional self-idealization. So again, to be clear, when I talk about narcissism, I am not talking about people, normal people who have narcissistic tendencies. The term normal narcissism refers to a healthy expression of self-preservation, self-regard, self-assertiveness, combined with typical levels of empathy, entitlement, and competitiveness, kindness, compassion. Most individuals do possess a degree of healthy narcissism. This can manifest as self-assurance and a sense of entitlement, while also demonstrating empathy and emotion. Studies indicate that this healthy level of self-esteem is present in most people and can serve as a source of motivation for personal growth and advancement in life. The media has frequently portrayed our current era as being self-absorbed. Some argue that many young adults exhibit narcissistic traits as they navigate through the phase of defining their identity in relation to others. While some may dismiss these assertions as exaggerated, there is evidence suggesting an increase in narcissistic behaviors. In fact, research shows that the young adults of today are more narcissistic than ever before, and that social media platforms can temporarily inflate our sense of self-importance and uniqueness. Narcissism often involves grandiose exhibitionism, which includes self-absorption and a desire to promote oneself. With the rise of our digital world, these traits have found an even better platform. It is stated in an article entitled "Social Media Narcissism: Are the Apps Creating Narcissists?" You'll see this up on the PowerPoint, on the website newportinstitute.com, that research confirms that young adults are the most narcissistic age group. Not only that, they're becoming more narcissistic. A study published in the Journal of Personality analyzed data from 85 samples of American college students. Participants completed the 40-question narcissistic personality inventory, and the researchers found that between 1982 and 2006, college students' NPI scores, which is the Narcissistic Personality Inventory scores, they significantly increased. Narcissistic individuals often seek to be the center of attention, even if it means behaving inappropriately, awkwardly, or eccentrically. Those who are self-absorbed but do not have a personality disorder may exhibit self-centered behavior, likely in specific areas of their life, and they may seek attention, but their behavior is not disordered. Being self-absorbed in certain aspects of life does not necessarily mean that a person is narcissistic in all areas. These individuals can take responsibility, have self-awareness, and can form mutually beneficial relationships. They can recognize and take responsibility for their actions when they hurt those they care about. They do not manipulate or mistreat others with malicious intent. They may feel uncomfortable with criticism, but are willing to accept it. A self-aware person understands the following: the impact their emotions have on others, how they feel, why they feel the way they do, how they interact with others, why they respond the way they do, what form their attitudes and beliefs, and what it takes to have meaningful relationships. The act of being self-focused is not necessarily selfish. Being selfish means taking something from someone else and keeping it for yourself. Healthy self-focus allows for the chance to also consider and support the needs of others while taking care of your own. People who are simply self-centered can enhance their lives by acknowledging their behaviors and by learning to have better relationships with others and manage their own emotions. Increasing self-reflection is not the same as being narcissistic. Narcissism is a way of viewing everything, not just your own life. When taken to the extreme, it means believing that everything is centered on you. Introspection can exist without leading to narcissism. Self-focus is especially problematic when it excludes a person's ability to focus on others and on the external world, as is the case with pathological narcissists, which is the focus of today's discussion. Those who are overly self-focused have the following: they blame others and avoid responsibility. They need to be the center of attention. They want everything their way. They cannot compromise. They lack empathy. They disregard rules. They overstep boundaries. They dominate conversations. They cannot receive feedback. They get defensive. They are inconsiderate of others' needs and feelings. They are poor listeners. They tend to monopolize conversations. They take more than they give, never reciprocate. They are unwilling to see others' perspectives. So, being self-focused is only one of the traits of a pathologically narcissistic person. Narcissistic personality disorder in and of itself has very specific signs, symptoms, and traits. When mental health professionals refer to narcissism as being on a spectrum, they are referring to non-pathological or normal narcissism on one end of the spectrum and pathological narcissism, or NPD, on the other end. And these are very, very different conditions. Personality disorders are extreme manifestations of common behaviors. They significantly impair a person's ability to behaviorally respond to life in an acceptable way, and they create difficulty in the person's interactions with others. They are sets of chronic, inflexible personality traits or patterns of deviant or abnormal behavior that those who have them will not change. And they won't even change them even when their behavior troubles everyone around them and negatively impacts all their relationships. Though pathological narcissists are mentally disordered, they are not insane or psychotic. They have full control of their faculties and are deliberate in their actions. They are deliberate in their actions. Those who are insane cannot control their urges, but narcissists can and do control their urges, though it often doesn't seem so. But they do know when and where to exhibit their narcissistic behaviors. Pathological narcissists fluctuate extremely between feelings of inferiority and failure with a sense of superiority and grandiosity. For a diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder to occur, patterns of grandiosity, lack of empathy for others, and inflation of their own abilities must be prevalent and long-term, with symptoms apparent in most areas of their lives. Believing their superiority and prioritizing their needs, often at the expense of others, pathological narcissists see everyone else as extensions of themselves. For that reason and others, narcissistic abuse is an incredibly distressing form of psychological and emotional manipulation, characterized by deceitful communication and deliberate exploitation. You may hear or have heard mental health professionals say, hurt people, and that we should have compassion for these individuals. For the sake of your mental health and that of your children, I urge you not to buy into that fallacy. It is simply not true. It's very misleading, and it can cause you to make decisions that are dangerous and not in your best interest. Narcissists do not suffer. The very nature of their disorder prevents that from being possible. Narcissists create a false self to hide their true selves, the part of them that they loathe. The false or the counterfeit self is emotionally disconnected from the real self, which also prevents it from forming genuine, meaningful connections with others. The false self acts as a distraction, drawing attention away from the true self. It is strong, and it can endure any amount of pain, hurt, and negative emotions. By creating it, the wounded child, which is the source of the development of this personality disorder, becomes immune to the neglect, manipulation, cruelty, overprotectiveness, or exploitation inflicted on them by their parents or other significant people in their lives. It's like a shield that keeps them safe and makes them feel both unseen and all-powerful at once. While it may appear that narcissists have excessive self-love, most of them truly hate themselves. Unable to handle the reality of who they really are, they tend to live in a make-believe world, one where they are wonderful and they are faultless. They assert their perceived greatness and deflect all responsibility for their behavior. They exaggerate their success, power, attractiveness, and ability to find perfect love. And they pick their partners based on whether those partners boost their inflated self-image and exaggerated sense of self. Because they prioritize getting that support in a relationship, they typically are not interested in learning a lot about the other person or really getting to know them on an intimate level. One of the hallmark traits of pathological narcissism is having little to no self-awareness. Change first requires awareness that something needs to change, and then it requires the ability to face the truth of who we are. The false self of a narcissist is an invention that is detached from reality. It's a psychological construct, an empty void that is incapable of feeling. Narcissists feel no more love for their family or any other close relationships than they do for strangers. They may use the word love to express their feelings, and they may at times demonstrate appropriate loving behavior, but it's a ruse. They are emotionally unequipped to love anyone, including themselves. With all their perceived power and specialness, one would think narcissists have very high self-esteem and great self-love, but that is not so. Their true selves have poorly defined senses of self, frequent episodes of self-loathing, and constant feelings of inadequacy. That is the side of narcissists no one ever gets to see. It tells them they are unlovable, inferior, worthless, ugly, and powerless. Feeling that way about themselves is unbearable, so they disown that part and replace it with a facade that they are proud to show the world. And that facade is known as the false self. The false self is a strong and impenetrable suit of armor. Its job is to absorb the narcissist's pain, hurt, fragility, and all perceived attacks from the outside world. It keeps him from excruciating self-examination and true introspection, from having to face terrifying fears that he may be less than perfect. If anyone tries to expose the narcissist for who he really is, the false self lashes out with a rage so terrifying that no one ever wants to cross him again. The false self is everything the true self isn't: grandiose, superior, omnipotent, and entitled. It tells the narcissist that everyone likes him, everyone envies him, everyone wants to be like him, and because of his superiority, the rules that apply to others do not apply to him. Narcissists are unwilling to recognize anyone else's thoughts, feelings, perceptions, and needs, especially those that conflict with their own. And they are highly critical and judgmental of others. Narcissists experience life from the outside looking in, as if it's belonging to someone else. There is a profound sense of detachment, alienation, and estrangement from the false self. He perpetually feels as though he is merely an observer in a film, one whose storyline he has minimal influence over. This watching is accompanied by a peculiar interest, almost a fascination. They cannot face who they are or the consequences of their behavior because they are not the perpetrators. They are merely observers of what the false self does. Licensed mental health counselor Maggie Holland answers the question, do narcissists know they are narcissists? In a 2022 article of the same name that she wrote for choosingtherapy.com. She states the following. In order to answer this question, it's important to understand the difference between ego-syntonic and ego-dystonic behaviors. Ego-syntonic behaviors are ones that align with our ego. This means that our thoughts, wishes, feelings, impulses, and behaviors align with who we feel we are as a person and with our core personal values. We can act upon and feel these things without our moral compass raising alarm bells. Those with ego-syntonic disorders, such as narcissism, are unaware of and unfazed by how others view their desires. They don't see their symptoms as problematic because they don't go against their internal belief system. In short, people with NPD truly believe that they are better than other people. Since they lack empathy, they struggle to recognize and understand the issue with treating others poorly. being highly critical of others, or generally treating others like they are less than. They truly believe it's all right for them to use any means necessary to fulfill their needs. Because of this, acting without empathy won't set off moral alarm bells like it would for someone else. They may recognize that people view them negatively, but they won't be able to take accountability for this. They feel that the other person is unable to understand them or is unworthy of their time. In the video is Narcissist Self-Aware or Introspective from the March 2021 Global Meeting on Stress Management. Professor Sam Vaknin, self-proclaimed narcissist, says the following. Sometimes the narcissist does gain self-awareness. Sometimes, typically in the wake of a life crisis, he does reach some kind of knowledge of his predicament. But in the absence of an emotional correlation or feelings, this cognitive awakening is useless. It does not congeal into an insight. Cognitive understanding of this disorder does not constitute a transforming insight. The narcissist does not internalize what he has learned about his disorder. It is just a piece of information. He never grasps the psychodynamic significance of disconduct. He may be able to identify narcissistic behaviors, but will not be able to identify why he does these things, which makes him tick. He may accept that something is wrong, but he doesn't link it to other problems in his life. You see, narcissists don't see themselves as having these traits and acting wrongly. Their self-esteem and self-worth are based on others' opinions of them. They ignore their own flaws and instead blame others for their mistakes and misfortunes. This behavior, which is known as projection, is common among individuals with NPD. Nathan Solon Schwartz writes the following in a passage from his book, Narcissism and Character Transformation. Psychologically, the shadow or reflection carries the image of the self, not the ego. It is interesting and even psychotherapeutically useful to have persons suffering from NPD study their face in a mirror. Often they will see someone of great power and effectiveness, precisely the qualities they feel a lack of. For even though they may overwhelm others with their energy and personal qualities, they themselves feel ineffective. Narcissists' inability to self-reflect in a healthy way helps them hide their shame and ignore the impact of their self-importance on others. It also stops them from gaining self-awareness and growing from their errors. Admitting they have a problem and acknowledging they are wrong is essential when people take a deep look at themselves. Narcissists often believe they are justified in all their actions. Narcissistic individuals might engage in self-reflection or soul-searching for various purposes, such as optimizing their performance to maximize their sources of narcissistic supply, better manipulating situations and their environment to their advantage, boosting their self-image, and reinforcing their sense of superiority. However, their reflections are often distorted by their grandiose self-perception and lack of empathy, making it challenging for them to consider others' perspectives or acknowledge their own shortcomings. To quote again, self-proclaimed narcissist Sam Vaknin, he says, they regard introspection as an inevitable and intellectually enjoyable maintenance chore. The introspection of the narcissist is emotionless, akin to an inventory of the good and bad sides, and without any commitment to change. It does not enhance his ability to empathize, nor does it inhibit his propensity to exploit others and discard them when their usefulness is over. It does not tamper his overpowering and raging sense of entitlement, nor does it deflate his grandiose fantasies. The narcissist's introspection is a futile and arid exercise at bookkeeping, a soulless bureaucracy of the psyche, and, in its own way, even more chilling than the alternative, a narcissist blissfully unaware of his own disorder. Vaknin says, and I quote, denial is an integral part of the abuser's ability to look at himself or herself in the mirror. He discusses in depth the narcissist's neurotic agonizing need to soul search. The outcomes of self-examination that lead nowhere in his TikTok video, Narcissism with Vaknin, which is he posted on 9/23/23. And he makes the following points. Narcissists are not self-aware of their confabulations. They cannot tell reality from fantasy. Narcissists can tell right from wrong, and they can modify their behaviors when needed. They are self-aware of their behaviors and the impact their behaviors have on others. They know exactly who they are, what they are doing, and how others are paying the price for it. Narcissists have very active consciences and excruciating pangs of introspection. They do lose sleep, worry, and agonize over things that they've done. In the end, narcissists always exonerate themselves. They are always acquitted in the court of their own minds and will never apologize. They always conclude that they did not misbehave or not to blame. They are not guilty and they are not responsible. Therefore, they will not feel bad about the things that they do. Narcissists twist, turn, and contort that they are eternal victims. They have never done anything wrong. All other people have wronged them. They are not bad people. And using alloplastic defenses, which is attempting to change the external environment instead of changing oneself, the narcissist concludes that it's not my fault. I did nothing wrong. I am not to blame. I am not responsible. I have been a victim. I have been abused. If I am asking myself if I'm a narcissist, it means that I am not a narcissist. Narcissists lack the capacity to comprehend the true nature of their identity, and they lack a healthy relationship with themselves that would provide them with grounding and stability. Instead, they look to others for a reflection of their identity. They are reliant on the feedback from the environment to shape their self-image. To avoid emotional pain, they work hard to ensure that what is reflected back to them is positive. Narcissists have an inherent craving to love others and be loved by others. Yes, they do. But unable to love themselves, they turn to loving their reflection. However, for that reflection to be appealing, it needs to be seen as lovable. This leads them to obsess over projecting an image that they think is lovable, all while making sure it aligns with their self-perception. This is very confusing, I know. Mirrors are important in understanding narcissism. They symbolize the fundamental deficit of the narcissist. Their reflection in the mirror tells them that they exist and helps to define them. Without it, they struggle to know who they are. The reflection seen in the mirror also serves as a shield against confronting their insecurities, allowing narcissists to perpetuate a facade of invincibility and superiority in their interactions with the world. Narcissists crave the admiration of others while fearing the innate qualities that they lack will be exposed. They feel the need to compete with others because they have deep-seated insecurities and a lack of self-worth. They often make self-aware remarks that they think might come across as introspective, but there is no intention to make any changes in themselves. Self-reflection is like doing an internal check on your thoughts and emotions to understand yourself better. Introspection means keeping an eye on and thinking about your inner thoughts and mental processes. And then there's mindfulness, which is all about being totally in the moment. Interestingly, some narcissists use mindfulness to boast entitlement. In a YouTube video by Dr. Ramani called "Why Do Narcissists Pretend to Love Mindfulness?" she says the following. What narcissistic folks love about mindfulness is that it is focused on staying in the moment, staying in the now, which for them is code for, I can do whatever feels good right now because I'm staying in the moment, staying in the now. Living in the moment can show up in many ways. When dealing with someone who is pathologically narcissistic, one of the toughest things is their lack of self-control. It feels like they can't resist any opportunity that comes their way, whether it's spending money recklessly, engaging in dangerous behaviors, or indulging in substance abuse. Their impulsive actions have serious consequences as they prioritize their immediate desires without considering the long-term effects. They often justify their behavior as necessary for their survival. To get ahead, narcissists resort to pretending, lying, or exploiting others. They might also try to imitate or take credit for the accomplishments of others out of envy and a desire to appear superior. This behavior can involve mimicking, plagiarizing, or even defaming others while trying to boost their own self-image. Ultimately, these actions are meant to distract from their true nature and intentions. They may also adopt the traits of individuals they admire and can easily transition from one relationship to another without forming genuine connections. Through the mirroring of others, they believe they have developed their own identity. If that identity is challenged, they become very defensive. Healthy mirroring is a critical tool in how we interact with others. In the early part of life, a person's soul lacks the ability to reflect or monitor itself. To help a child grow and form a healthy identity, it needs outside reflection and guidance. When a mother mirrors her child, she can encourage or control their spontaneity, provide positive feedback, and set essential boundaries. Supportive and loving caregivers who offer calm and non-judgmental attention help create moments of closeness with the child. This connection makes the child feel safe and protected in their surroundings. When caregivers show compassion, the child realizes that they are accepted and valued. This feeling of being loved is essential for the child's confidence and self-worth, contributing to a healthy sense of identity as they develop. The child sees that they are appreciated and understood through the mother's caring eyes. This gives them the chance to grow and mature in a healthy way. By mirroring the child's feelings, the mother helps them develop confidence in their true self. It's all about validating and supporting who someone is. It means truly understanding and reflecting their feelings, thoughts, and actions, helping them to become more confident in themselves. Healthy mirroring is all about being kind and empathetic, making people feel like they're truly being heard and understood. When a disordered parent reflects feelings without being aware of their true self, the child cannot fully understand who they are as an individual. This leads to difficulties in building self-worth. They may see themselves as lacking and spend their lives searching for approval from others, which will never fulfill them. Because of this flawed mirroring, the person is unlikely to develop and grow as they should. A child who misses out on proper attachment and mirroring feels abandoned at their core. This deep wound makes the child emotionally detached and leads them to separate from their true self. They create a false self to establish their identity, which can result in narcissistic personality disorder. So this kind of all circles back to this mirroring thing. Without a real sense of self, the child's narcissism is shaped by their responses to their environment and the people in it. In a flawed environment, a child may unknowingly develop a sense of superiority. This feeling helps them hide their own insecurities that come from being disconnected from their true self. They may feel guilt and shame for having needs, leading them to seek attention and empathy from others, often manipulating those around them. This behavior can persist into adulthood. When they don't receive the validation they seek, their inflated self-image can turn into anger and punishment. The inner child, sensitive and reactive, remains present at any age. A narcissist feels validated only when they receive empathy and attention from others. When they do, they feel happy and secure. However, if someone else gets more attention, or if the validation stops, their mood can quickly shift, leaving them feeling hurt. Always searching for safety, esteem, and worth, narcissists look for others who can provide the validation and love they crave, often gravitating towards compassionate and empathetic individuals. Children of narcissistic parents tend to reflect their parents' behaviors, acting as a mirror that absorbs these traits. They learn that their worth comes from making the parent happy. They focus on trying to get the parent's approval, often neglecting their own identity and needs in the process. Parents who are emotionally neglectful or narcissistic often show little emotion or express negative feelings like annoyance or anger when they're interrupted. This confuses the child because their feelings are not acknowledged. The child may start to believe that their emotions are wrong or unimportant. If this happens often, the child learns to distrust their own feelings and may feel inadequate. They come to think that their sense of self is incorrect. Attachment issues arise because the child tries to adapt to maintain a bond with their caregivers. The child changes their behavior, not the parent. When a child feels the need to take care of a parent's needs, as is the case with parental alienation, it can lead to attachment issues. As a result, the child may start to isolate themselves from any support. This creates a problem where the child is stuck in the unhealthy parent's distorted view of themselves. The child now mirrors the parent, and both are unable to act separately from that reflection. The child is left to see only a broken reflection of themselves. When used in adulthood by someone with pathological narcissism, mirroring behavior becomes insidious and deceitful, but in a different way. Healthy mirroring is all about creating a supportive and validating environment to help the other person grow emotionally, mentally, and socially. But with narcissistic mirroring, it's more about serving oneself and trying to control the other person. To navigate relationships effectively, it's crucial to understand the distinctions between different types of mirroring. By being able to recognize indicators of narcissistic mirroring, such as constant attention-seeking, entitlement, and a lack of genuine empathy, individuals can approach relationships with greater awareness and protect themselves from emotional manipulation. So it's very important to understand what this mirroring is about that narcissists use. Narcissistic individuals often rely on mirroring others because they lack a true sense of self. Without someone or something to mirror, they may feel lost and struggle to understand their own emotions, as well as the emotions of others. Left to their own devices, they might misinterpret others' emotions, projecting their own assumptions onto them. Additionally, they may have difficulty comprehending emotions beyond basic ones like fear, anger, sadness. When discussing emotions, their responses can be quite general and childlike. Overall, they may lack insight into their own feelings and struggles. Narcissists are unable to cope with their own imperfections and struggle to accept any flaws in themselves or others, unless such flaws are admired by their social circle. They cannot bear to have a negative self-image. The manipulative strategy of mirroring serves several purposes. First, it allows the narcissist to disarm their target, making it easier for them to exert control and influence over them. Instead of genuinely portraying the other person's emotions, narcissistic mirroring, mimicking others' behaviors, hobbies, and emotions, is used as a facade to reflect the other person's feelings and actions to earn their trust or admiration, establish rapport, and fulfill their desires. By mirroring the target's emotions and behaviors, the narcissist demonstrates an ability to empathize, which may lead the target to believe that the narcissist genuinely cares about them and their well-being, but it's a facade. Narcissistic mirroring creates a false sense of intimacy by making the target feel seen, understood, and valued. And this connection can be very alluring, leading the target to believe that they have found a genuine and empathetic partner. This kind of mirroring is insincere, and it is centered on fulfilling the narcissist's needs, rather than considering the other person's needs. M. Scott Peck, author of People of the Lie, An Encounter with Evil in Everyday Life, states the following in his book: I know now that one of the characteristics of evil is the desire to confuse. And if you haven't read People of the Lie, the premise of the book is that people who are evil attack others instead of facing their own failures. And he says, until evil becomes a diagnosable condition, victims of it will never be properly recognized or treated. Narcissists pretend to be close to others, but they can't really connect emotionally. They just copy what others want to see to make it seem like they have things in common. A narcissist has the uncanny, survival-based ability to deeply understand others on a psychological level and perceive where their exploitable vulnerabilities are. Unfortunately, they misuse this ability to manipulate and control others, faking empathy to break down their victims' defenses. They are also skilled at mimicking emotions and behaviors. They keep detailed records of people's emotions and use this to construct accurate imitations of emotional behavior, which can be very deceptive. At the beginning of a relationship, narcissists seem too good to be true, and they are. But targets are not supposed to figure that out. To make an indelible impression, mesmerize and entrap them, they use tactics such as gaslighting and mirroring. You've heard of gaslighting, and we just talked about mirroring. This is all to obtain and maintain their perfect reflection from the prospect of a potential partner. They groom the love interest to mirror back whatever image they want them to project. The narcissist mirrors the target, making them feel deeply connected and intimate, as if they found the perfect match. This is called the idealization phase. Once the narcissist feels in control, their behavior changes drastically. As long as the love interest stays attuned to what the narcissistic partner wants, they can hold the mirror of perfection for them, but that is never a long-term solution. No one can constantly mirror a narcissist without it taking a massive toll on their own well-being. No relationship is flawless. People are neither entirely good nor entirely bad. However, a narcissist will demand that the love interest consistently reflects an idealized version of themselves onto them, which is an impossible feat. No one can sustain such an unrealistic expectation. Once a narcissist is confident in their capture, the admiration and understanding once shown can turn into belittling and criticism, known as devaluation. This shift can be very confusing and emotionally exhausting for the target, often making them feel confused, guilty, or even responsible for the manipulator's actions, creating a toxic cycle where they constantly seek the idealization phase and blame themselves for the devaluation phase. Narcissists are infamous for their lack of honesty and their talent for manipulating situations. Their main objective is self-preservation, and they are willing to resort to deceit to shield themselves, regardless of the consequences on others. There's up on the PowerPoint, you'll see the Narcissist Prayer by Dana Craig. I really love this because she nails it. That didn't happen. And if it did, it wasn't that bad. And if it was, that's no big deal. And if it is, that's not my fault. And if it was, I didn't mean it. And if I did, you deserved it. She really gets that right. Narcissists do not care how they hurt others because they see them as objects or possessions. Others are merely sources of adulation, admiration, and attention. People are considered disposable and interchangeable. Once the supply is gone, the person, no matter the nature of the relationship, is considered worthless. For the sake of survival, narcissists spend a lifetime analyzing the emotions and reactions of others and learning how to blend in. Without the natural ability to show care and concern for others, they must learn to imitate what others do. That allows them to respond and react appropriately to any given situation. They can convincingly mimic empathetic behavior. But in truth, they are emotionally unequipped to love or care for others. They don't even love themselves. So the question this segment of the conference asks is, do narcissists face their own reflection? Well, narcissists live in an alternate reality, and they have very fragile egos. To keep those egos propped up, they arrange and interpret everything in front of them through denial and the creation of false realities that reflect their innermost beliefs about themselves. They can never be held accountable for anything they do. To avoid being pinned down, they use this tactic called projection. They project onto others a reflection of what they are feeling about themselves. Accusations are confessions. When they lie, they accuse you of being a liar. When they hurt you, they accuse you of hurting them. If they make an accusation, they will later deny ever saying it. They'll accuse you of being selfish and unloving when it is they who are selfish and unloving. Something or someone else is always to blame. No matter what occurs, they will never accept responsibility for their part. Believing they are victims in every situation and everyone else is their enemy puts them ever on the defensive. Their very survival depends on them getting you before you get them. Any perceived attack triggers the narcissist's deeply embedded pain. He despises this aspect of himself, and he tries to annihilate it using his false self. Unable to restrain himself when triggered, he must project his hatred outward. And this means he will annihilate a tangible target, hence the abuse. He doesn't want to hurt himself, so he hurts others. Unable to feel what others feel, or experience remorse or guilt over the pain he inflicts on others, this is very easy for him to do. Narcissists struggle to self-reflect in a healthy way, which allows them to hide their shame and disregard the impact of their self-importance on others. However, this lack of self-reflection also prevents them from gaining self-awareness and learning from their mistakes. Mirrors hold significant value in grasping narcissism, as they epitomize the essential lack within the narcissist. The reflection they see in the mirror validates their presence and aids in defining their sense of self. In absence of this reflection, they encounter challenges in self-awareness. Additionally, the mirror's reflection acts as a protective shield, preventing narcissists from confronting their insecurities, allowing them to project an image of invincibility and superiority in their actions with the external world. The manipulative tactic of mirroring serves multiple objectives. Initially, it enables the narcissist to disarm their victim, facilitating the exertion of control and influence over them. Instead of authentically reflecting the emotions of the other individual, narcissistic mirroring involves imitating their behaviors, interests, and feelings. This is done as a pretense to mirror the other person's emotions and actions, to gain their trust or admiration, build a connection, and satisfy their own needs. Through mirroring the emotions and actions of the victim, the narcissist showcases an ability to empathize, potentially leading the victim to believe that the narcissist truly cares about them and their welfare. Narcissistic mirroring establishes a deceptive sense of closeness by making the victim feel acknowledged, understood, and appreciated. But they are unwilling to recognize anyone else's thoughts, feelings, perceptions, and needs, especially those that conflict with their own. Narcissists do not recognize any of their behaviors as irrational or unacceptable. Blinded by their perfect self-images, they believe all their reactions are justified. They continually walk a fine line between fantasy and reality. They confuse imagination with true memories, or they form false memories and then distort things to make them fit into their fabricated, recreated world. Narcissists are impossible to get along with. You will never be accepted or respected for who you are. You don't matter, nor do your opinions, and you will never win a battle with them. Narcissists can never heal, and they will never be happy. They are loathsome, empty shells of human beings, parasites whose very survival depends on having others to feed off of. As long as they walk this earth, they will remain trapped in the living hell they created for themselves. If you have experienced a relationship with a narcissist or suspect you have likely seen glimpses of a normal, perhaps even ideal person, and told yourself there must be good somewhere inside of this person, and that there is always hope for change. Since narcissists observe others and learn how to exhibit appropriate behaviors to disguise themselves, you will catch glimpses of apparent humanity, but never empathy. Be careful not to allow these brief emanations of kindness to fool you into believing in their potential. They are only nice and kind if there is some personal gain for being so. Beware, these leopards never change their spots, but they are likely to try to manipulate you into changing yours. Forget about potential. What you see is what you get. Thank you for attending this segment of the conference. I do hope that you found this information that I shared with you valuable. Feel free to email me at randy@randifine.com with any questions or comments you may have. And should you desire professional support, I am available to offer that to you as well. Consultations and sessions can be booked directly through my website, randifine.com, under the heading Offerings and under Expert Services. If you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to read my books on this topic. They will be listed on the PowerPoint for your reference. I hope you enjoyed the rest of this wonderful conference. Goodbye.